This Polish slasher horror sequel kinda snuck up on me. The first film was alright, with some decent gore and chase, but now Nobody Sleeps in the Woods Tonight 2 has arrived. Should it be on your binge list? When something horrible happens to the only survivor of a bloody massacre, an insecure rookie cop must overcome his fears to stop further carnage. Now, this sequel picks up pretty much where the last left off, but luckily you don't have to have seen the first to get into the second one. We are quickly caught up by some cleverly placed exposition that's done fairly quickly. A teenage girl was found covered in blood with her dead friends all around. She tells the tale of these hideously deformed and massively huge men that were the perpetrators. The police officer in charge decides to take her back to the scene of the crime, because that's a good idea, to examine the area and get the facts straight. And there's also a young rookie cop who's a bit bumbling, but he's nice and he means well. And he's super concerned with protocol and safety, but he has no confidence to back up anything if he's ever confronted. When the girl and officer arrive at the crime scene, an event occurs which then propels the story into its violent trajectory. It's also during this time that the story pivots from a slasher to a sci-fi gore fest. And this is a very gory slasher film that doesn't waste too much time before it dives right into the violence. And while the camera doesn't always show the initiation of violence, it doesn't ever shy away from showing the aftermath in just all its nasty glory. There are times, though, where the camera is right there to capture the assaults as they happen. The imagery is visceral and grotesque, and the production utilizes a ton of practical effects that are done expertly and then convincingly. The use of makeup is also just wonderfully executed. There are some creature designs that are nasty, but they're plausible given the story context. I love that in this we have some terribly stupid characters who are there basically to just have terrible things happen to them. And because the setup of some of these characters makes them not really charismatic, we're not distraught when the carnage begins. Something that I also enjoyed in the story is how our main protagonist struggles with some moral dilemmas that come as a result of knowledge that he gains. His eyes are open to certain circumstances, which then cause him to have to make choices when it comes to some people in his life. The conflict that arises is done well, if not a bit rushed. There's also an odd mix of comedy that's present here. I mean, it's not laugh out loud funny, but more of an awkward humor that contrasts with the imagery to make the world that we're watching just very unsettling. There's also some whimsical music that plays through a lot of this, and it messed with my head because my brain was trying to reconcile the nasty imagery that I was seeing and yet hearing some upbeat and quirky tunes that sounded like they belonged in something much more bright and cheery. I liked the mix and the confusion that it caused for my senses. Now, the story itself is pretty basic and even thin. This takes place over the course of one night, and really, aside from the violence, not much happens. This movie feels almost like it's the middle piece of a trilogy story, where we're watching a transition happen that sets up all of the story action that's yet to come. I still had fun with what was shown, but it is rather pointless at this juncture because nothing is really resolved, but just a bunch of setup is established. Now, this is only 96 minutes, and most of the time it goes by at a pretty quick pace. There were one or two segments that felt a little more drawn out, but I think those are working to build on whatever third iteration of the story that might be coming. So overall, Nobody Sleeps in the Woods Tonight 2 is great if you're looking for violence and gore, but it's fairly lacking if you're wanting a story with depth or complexity. The switch to sci-fi that this sequel takes works, and I had fun with the new direction and the opportunities that genre allows. But the story still only feels like it's setting up a future movie, making this one simply a stepping stone in the story progression. And I don't think this is terribly memorable, and it's never really scary or tense, but the practical effects and makeup are exciting to watch, and they really do create a nice aesthetic to the film. I don't think this is one to rush and watch, even if you are in the mood for some bloody carnage. There's sex, nudity, some profanity, and an absolute ton of gruesome violence. I give Nobody Sleeps in the Woods Tonight 2.5 out of 5 couches. So what are you watching right now? Anything worth checking out? Let me know in the comments below. If you enjoyed this review, please give it a like. Also, don't forget to share and subscribe. I'm Chris. This is Movies and Munchies. Thanks for couching with me.